Well, as we continue on with the Ten Commandments, I'm going to do this last part of the first one here. Is it started with God telling him, like, I am the God that brought you out of Egypt. And he tells them here that you shall have no other gods before me. And as God is saying this amazing thing, I like this picture here. How many of you have ever been out at night, especially in a place where there's not a lot of light, and looked at the stars and just been awed by everything you see? I mean, that's happened to me many times. That's probably one of my favorite things about going to a campground or going to camp. You get away from the city lights and you can really see the stars. You know, if you didn't know, those stars are there all the time. Even right now, daylight, the stars are there. But yet, these other lights get in the way, don't they? These other lights get in the way and they flood us with so much light that we can't see the light from the stars. It's interesting, so I want you to keep that in mind as we look into this idea of other gods that get in our way. And so let's look here in Exodus 20, verses 2 through 3, where it comes from. And it says, I am... Didn't zoom in, I don't know. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. And just to remind you, last week we looked at that, how that is the God as Elohim and Jehovah. And this is the first time that God has expressed himself to the people with his personal name. He did that for the first time to Moses that we read about there in Exodus chapter 6. But here, now everybody can know him with his personal name. Abraham didn't know it. Isaac didn't know it. No one before Moses knew God's personal name. And I think that's really cool that we can know that, Jehovah. And a lot of times we pronounce that Jehovah now or Yahweh. And so both these aspects of Elohim and Jehovah is represented here. Now when it says gods, no other gods, it uses the term Elohim as well. But that's not the main God. And so can be a generic term for God that we see, or just El. That's used as a lot of prefix for a lot of other gods. But we know that there is only one God. Now there's lots of other gods, but there's only one true God. Now this is a different view than a lot of other people that have today. So when he says, have no other gods before me, before here, the translation could also mean hostile or besides me, okay? Because you could look at that and say, have no gods before me. So you could have other gods that are really important to you, just don't have any more important than me. But if we put that word besides, have no other gods besides me. Okay, so you can have other interests, other things important to you, but have none of them that even come close to rivaling me. All right, and so that's a very important aspect here. And so that's why, and every time I use the word God or any pronoun referring to God, I capitalize that letter to show respect to him. And so there's no other gods, lowercase g. And so when God says this, you could think that there are other gods. Capital G, gods. And I imagine some people have really struggled with that. Okay, so there are a lot of gods, and I'm just going to choose the Christian God. Some people come away with that idea. Now, we believe that there is only one true God. There's only one true supreme being in the universe and everything. And everything that is known, unknown, that will be known, there is only one true God. Right? And that's the Christian God, was the Jewish God, and now the Christian God that we observe. And isn't it cool, isn't it great, isn't it amazing that we know him and we're blessed to be known by him? And so we need to continue to grow in this and understand that this, when God presented himself to the Israelite people, this was a new way of thinking. How many lowercase g gods have they seen before this right here? Many, right? Many. They saw a lot of, which I'll get into in February, a lot of idols to other gods. There's a lot of ancestry worship that they've witnessed and probably had within their midst as well. If you don't know much about ancestry worship, that's where you worship your forefathers or your ancestors that have gone on before you, and they kind of look after you. Have you ever seen the movie Milan? You know, that really paints a lot of ancestry worship, how your ancestors look after you. And so we have to be careful of these things that we watch, these nice, pleasant cartoons, because they really, a lot of times, they plant deception, lies, in their nice little movies. And so if we do watch them with our kids or grandkids, we need to make sure it's like, but we know that's not true. We need to make sure they understand. Because it can be confusing. But there is a lot of people, millions and millions and millions of people believe in ancestry worship as well. All right? Much less all these other gods, all these other religions. Okay? But I stand here to tell you that there is no excuse for people not to know God. No excuse at all. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and they said, well, what if someone was on an island? Or what if someone just never knew, never was ever exposed to the teachings of the Bible? Well, look here what Joe did a good job reading here, Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 20. And this whole chapter 1 and 2 of Romans is excellent to make this point, but read this with me. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of people who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, that is, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived, being understood by what has been made, so that they are without excuse. Who is without excuse? Everyone. Everyone is without excuse. And there's lots of evidences that there is a God, that there is a supreme being. And really, it should let you to know there's something out there. I want to know who it is. If there one day you got a letter in the mail, or if you went to try to pay your mortgage or your car loans, whatever, and the bank came out and said, you owe nothing. You don't owe anything. It's like, what do you mean? I hate to ask a lot of questions, but I just want to make sure, are you sure you got the right person? It's like, yep, someone paid everything for you. Paid it all. Would you just say, great, talk to you later? Or would you say, explain that to me? Who is it? Can I know who it is? Oh yeah, you can know who it is. They actually want to know you. Or you say, I want nothing to do with that guy. Nothing. Tell him that you didn't tell me, okay? Now, could you, in that scenario, live your life with everything paid for and you not know that someone did that for you? Is that possible? I think it's impossible. Even if you keep making your payments, at some point the bank would say something to you saying, what are you doing? They keep sending it back, or they just put it back in your account, or it doesn't go through. There's no debt there. There's no more debt there. What are you trying to do? And so that's just a simple example of that it's impossible to deny that there is a great being out there. Now, of course, we see so many evidences. One of them is the sky that we see, like that question I asked you, the amazing nature that we see. But here in Romans chapter 1, it also says that within us, that's evident within us. Now, I mentioned last week that I believe these 10 commandments are kind of imprinted on our soul. And I think that's true in a lot of ways, that we naturally, as we mature, we find these commandments to be true. But I will say also that they don't come naturally. You don't naturally want to do that. You may say, well, how could it be on us but not do it naturally? Well, naturally, we put ourselves first and foremost in our lives. Like children, many times, they want to please themselves. They know basic right and wrongs, but they'll give in to themselves to get the cookie, to watch TV, whatever it may be, right? And if you don't learn a better behavior, you continue that way for the rest of your life. And I think we can see a lot of people, a lot of examples of grown-ups that have continued that the rest of their life. They just never deny themselves what they want. And so there is no excuse to not know Jehovah. There is no excuse to not know God, because God is seen in his invisible attributes. And I think we should use that as Christians to help bring people to him. To at least bring the idea, like someone paying your bills, bring the ideas like, isn't it obvious that there's something out there? And we can ask good basic questions. How did you get here? What are we here for? Anything we can do to pull on that string to help people to get closer to God, we need to do. Now, we don't need to be rude in that way. We need to be gentle in everything that we do. But everybody is without excuse. Here in Exodus 7, as the Egyptians are struggling with God here, then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I extend my hand over Egypt and bring out the sons of Israel from their midst. So, what was the reason for the great Exodus? The first answer is to bring the Israelites out of Egypt, out of bondage, right? Yes, and that's true. But there's also a second main reason why, and it's to show the world who God is. This is the Ten Commandments is God's introduction from him to his people, but bringing the people out of Egypt was God's introduction to the world that he is the supreme being. Defeat all the other gods that there are in the known world. Okay? And so people suppress or deny this truth. In Egypt and today. Do you know in Egypt, there was, as they write down the history, they do that, they write on walls or on rocks and things like that. The Pharaoh wouldn't let them describe exactly how the Israelites left. You know, he couldn't deny it in his own time, but you know what? I'm going to scrub it from history so no one in the future will know what an awful leader I was. So he was denying that. He was trying to reshape history so no one in the future would know accurately the history. He was suppressing it. Now, surely that wouldn't happen today. Well, it happens quite a bit, doesn't it? Whoever is in control today, they can change history. They try to change history or how it's presented so you have a different opinion. And people are doing that about God all the time. People are doing that about God all the time. But so this has been true from Adam up to now, that people try to morph who God really is or if there really is a God. And so us as Christians, we're trying to bring things back to the accurate way of looking at history. Have you ever felt yourself like a history teacher? Well, all of us Christians, in a way, are history teachers. We're trying to tell people the right way, how we got here, why we're here, and what we're supposed to do here. Now, like it or not, that job is getting larger and larger as more and more people don't know the basic history of the Bible. Now, I apologize. Sometimes, like when I talk about Mount Sinai and things like that, if you're new to Christianity or haven't come here much, you may not know a lot about that. And if you want to know more about that, please let me know, and I can have a study with you or direct you to passages in the Bible, because I want you to understand things that we discuss here. Because I'll speak from a mind that has been a Christian for decades, and so I may not say it in a way that you can always understand. But we all have a Bible, praise be to God. And so I want you to learn. If you don't have a good Bible, let me know, and I'll get you one. The church here will provide one for you. So as we look at the universe, and we look at how we're made, and we look what's inside of us, and we recognize that there's a God, and that there's a supreme God, and we chase after him, that he has rules and regulations for us to live by. So, and he thinks highly of these as well. So here in Deuteronomy 6, he says, "You shall not follow other gods, any of the gods of the peoples who surround you, for the Lord your God, who is in the midst of you, is a jealous God." He is a jealous God. This is God saying this. "So follow him, or else the anger of the Lord your God will be kindled against you, and he will wipe you off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. Remember the split rock there at Meribah. So it's interesting how this has happened, that we're not supposed to test Jehovah with competed devotion. And that's the way it looks here. The Hebrews, as they would read this, they would see this meaning as with competing devotion. You may think, well, of course not. I'm not going to have any other God besides God. And you may think, this doesn't apply to me today. The first commandment, maybe the first quite a few, don't apply to me today, because there's no way I'm going to put another God before the great God. Well, here's a list of basic gods or symbols of gods of other religions. And a lot of these are growing. Some are growing more than others. And look, Jesus is right there in the midst of them, like a happy group of people there, or beings. And it says there are almost 5,000 gods being worshipped by humanity. But don't worry, only yours is right. Now, I got this from a website to put down Christianity and people that think that only your God is right. I didn't put this together to help you be aware that people may say this. People are saying this en masse. And they would say that you are arrogant. Arrogant for you to think your God is the only one. And we need to have confidence to, one, know that, and we need to have boldness to proclaim it. Because we're not helping people by letting people believe lies. You're not helping people by keeping them in their delusion. One of the great lies of the devil is to say, be polite, don't be rude, you're not going to win them over. Tell them that, oh, that's interesting, that's a different way of looking at it. You're not helping them with that. If it doesn't end with, but let me tell you the truth. It eventually needs to end with that idea, that they need to know the truth. So what might you put before God, or besides God, or compete or rival with God? Okay, it's not these other gods that I just showed right there, but there are many gods that are competing for your time. What other gods do you think compete for your devotion to Jehovah God? Well, here in America, there's a few, isn't there? Entertainment is a big one. Hobbies are a big one. Sports are big. There's so many. Money is huge. Family is huge. I mean, I could list a number of them. So there are many gods, lowercase g gods, that are competing with you. It's not just these other religions like Muhammad and Hindu and these other ones, okay? There are, whatever takes away your time away from God, that the way it's written there, have no other gods besides me that rival me, okay? Is there anything in your life that rivals God? That when you have to choose between devotion to God that we worship and something else, do you choose that something else? And the trick that sometimes the devil gets us to fall into is like, as long as it's less than 50%. It's almost a democracy kind of vote. As long as you choose God, the Christian God, 51%, then he's your main God. I don't think God looks at it that way. I want 100% of you. Just an example, you can try this out, this little test. You can go home today and talk with your spouse. Do I have at least 51% of you? I don't mind if you're 49% with someone else, as long as I got 51%. Then, yikes, I'm so blessed, I'm so happy. I don't think that would go over very well. Well, surely 80-20 would be okay. I'll go even over the top. I'll give her or him 90% and only give this other person 10%. That is an A. Surely that's okay. I don't think that will go over too well. And you know that because you're not even going to try that. Or if you do try that, once you wake up, you realize that wasn't a good idea. Okay? how do you think that's going to go over with God? Of course we know that. God is a jealous God. Why anger him? And so I use that spouse scenario because a lot of times we think jealousy. Now jealousy, I think, gets a bad rap a lot of times. Like it's bad to be jealous. There's no situation you should be jealous. I think it's okay to be jealous some. It is. Because God's jealous. It says that, and there's other verses to say that as well. I guarantee you, if my wife just says, you know what, I'm going to go have dinner with someone. They're going to take me out. We're just friends. I don't know about that. One thing I do in premarital counseling, I tell people is like, you know what? You should have no other really close male friends than your husband. You should have no other close female friends than your wife. I mean, really close. That's my point of view. You can do with it what you want. But I think when you have personal conversations with someone of the opposite sex, like especially when things are going well with your spouse, it doesn't bode well. And I imagine your spouse is going to see that in some vein, cheating. And there is going to be some jealousy that comes out. And so with this, with God, when God sees you choose something besides him, I think there's going to be some jealousy. I know there's going to be jealousy. And it's not just that they choose another God to replace him. I think it's when you choose to take time that's devoted to him to something else, whatever it is. He's like, what are you doing? That's going to be obvious, isn't it? So the writer here says, why test his love? Why test God? Why even put him to the test in the first place? And David wrote this concerning this. Is like, how long, Lord, Jehovah, how long will you be angry forever? Will your jealousy burn like fire? And this is after the Israelites have done some things that really angered God. And God was angry. And David could tell that God was very angry. Now, the thing is, when you have split your time with people and with attention, the other one is going to want more of you. There's competition for you. There can only be one main interest in your life. Because your interest will demand you to choose. God does the same. And God's trying to help you to say, have no other gods. It says before me, but also besides me, that even rival me, come close to me, have none other. Look for ways for you to choose me over everything else. And enjoy that. Enjoy choosing me every time. Because I've done so much for you. But yet we struggle with this. We struggle with this. Now, Jesus stated this in a positive tone. If you notice, most of the 10 Commandments, 10 statements here, are put in like in a negative tone. 8 of 10 of them have like a negative tone. They start with a Hebrew word lo. That's like, never do this. Don't even approach this. Never, ever do that. Well, Jesus approached it in a positive action. Okay? And we know this, of course. It's the greatest commandment. And Jesus said here, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. That is the great and foremost commandment. Okay? Now, does this mean that this one is better than the first commandment that we have in the Old Testament? No. Because the Old Testament is great in that it says, do not do this. Because if he said, do not do this, there's a lot of people that would have in their mind, okay, so I can do everything up to that. All right? If you go to a store and it says, no shirt, no shoes, no service. All right? But if it said, you need to wear pants and a shirt and shoes, okay? Then you would think all these loopholes to get around it. That's just the way we're made. But it's very clear. So God says, don't ever have any gods before me. And so what Jesus does here in the New Testament, it says, you know what? In order to fulfill that, love God with everything that you have. With everything that you have. With your actions, with your mind, with your emotion, with your plan, money. Love God with everything. And make everything else compared to your love to God minuscule. Almost nothing. is in shadow of your love for God. And that's where it should be. Even in those other things, people can see that you love God, you're passionate about God. Okay? If you ever have to spend time with someone of the opposite sex and you're with them, let them always know how much you love your spouse. It's the same thing. So there's not even a chance, a remote chance, for them to think that they have a chance to steal your heart away. All right? So if you do not have this, then you can't please God. You can't, you won't, don't even try. You need to repent if God isn't first and foremost of your life. So with this mindset, then every command is followed with, yes, Lord. Because if you don't have this one, then the other commandments mean nothing. It's nothing. That's why he starts with this one right here. This is so core. Love God with everything. Let nothing rival God ever. And if you feel that coming up, if you feel something rival with you, let me ask you, if you ever had a temptation, if you felt like a spark with someone and you're married, and you felt a spark with someone else that's not your spouse, you think, you know what, I think I can balance it out. I think it's okay. You're fooling yourself, okay? The best thing to do is to cut that immediately, or do something extreme to make sure that you are faithful to your spouse always. I say the same with God. If there's anything that's rivaling, if you feel something, ooh, I really like that, it makes me not miss being time with God. Danger, okay? And so we see this here in Romans 8, 38 through 39. This is God, how much he loves us as he woos us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Nothing can separate us between God except us. You are the only thing that can separate you from God. You're the only one. An empire, the devil, demons, any other God, nothing can separate you from God except you. You're the only one that can do that. So to please God is to be with God. That's all he's asking. Be with me all the time. Inseparable, okay? And everything will work out great. You know, as awe-inspiring it is to see the universe and everything, you know what's even better? Being with the one who created all of that. You know, remember back when you saw your spouse, you was like, wow, what an amazing person. But what's even better than that first wow moment is the relationship you spend with them. At least it should be. And that's us with God. We fell for God because he's so amazing, so wonderful. He's the only reliable option out there that gives us what we need. And then we get to know him intimately. He actually, if we take on Christ in baptism, he dwells inside of us. Isn't that wonderful and amazing? Maybe you need to renew your vows with God. I don't know. Only you know that. Maybe you've let something come in. You've let a mistress God come into your life. Nip it in the bud. Get rid of that immediately and recommit yourself to God.